Hey, welcome back to Ryan's Game Quest. This is episode 2. I'm talking about games, news, and relevant topics. I'm still trying to figure out whether I want to make some individual specific videos or continue with this more podcasty format. To be honest, I really like to write and write long form, so I personally like this iteration of the channel. At some point, I would like to bring in some other people to talk about games and develop some discussion, but what I'm trying to say is that I'm figuring this all out as we go along. Holy smokes, what a week it's been since the first episode, the Game Awards being the main point of discussion, as I'll dive right into that with the winners and all the crazy announcements. And as of recording, the full first season of the animated anthology series Secret Level is now on Amazon Prime Video. The first 8 episodes released last week and the remaining 7 this week. This is a series of animated shorts all centered around different video game properties led by series creator Tim Miller and production company Blur Studio. I've seen them all, I have my favorites and my thoughts, and I'll share those later. Before I get into the Game Awards, a couple of corrections from last week's episode. The first correction mentioned in my Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree discussion that I beat the game again to get to the DLC. I made note of this in the video description, but you actually don't need to complete the game in order to access the DLC. My bad. What I meant to say and what I left out was that I wanted to enter the expansion with any endgame weapons or armor that could be obtained or that I obtained in a prior playthrough. Honestly, that's kind of an excuse, though, because by the time I got to the point where I had all these endgame weapons like Rivers of Blood, the Blasphemous Blade, and the Black Knife, and even the Black Knife armor set to go along with it, my simple enjoyment of the game led me to just finishing it and moving on to New Game Plus. There's 2 requirements for accessing the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree, and they are defeating 2 bosses, Starscourge Radahn and Mohg the Lord of Blood. Defeating Mohg actually nets you direct access to the Shadow of the Erdtree map. Alright, enough delay, let's talk about the Game Awards 2024. Wow, what a fantastic show in my opinion. I love seeing the winners and developers of these games giving speeches and having plenty of time to do so. Last year, this was not so much the case. The lead director of Team Asobi, who won many awards including Game of the Year for Astrobot, Nicholas Duquette, also had some great words about a caring team, putting the player first, and the inspirations for games. I would recommend checking out if you haven't. Before the wild announcements though, I first want to go to the winners. And the big winner from the Game Awards 2024 was Astrobot. Astrobot took home Game of the Year. This also won Best Direction, Best Action Adventure Game, and Best Family Game. So congrats to Team Asobi. This is well deserved. This is the best quote-unquote video game on the list. One of the best 3D Mario games that's not a 3D Mario game that came out this year. Just so inventive, clever with its mechanics, and fun to play during every moment. Balatro earned a little independent sweep with the Best Independent Game and Best Debut Independent Game, as well as Best Mobile Game. No surprises here, although I would have definitely liked to see Animal Well win either indie category. Oh well. Next, a category that I wanted the next entry in the Metroid Prime series to win was Most Anticipated Game, and to no one's surprise, this went to Grand Theft Auto 6. This game is going to be huge when it comes out in 2025, so yeah, I would stay on the lookout for that one. And then one of my favorite games from this year, and I talked about it in detail last week, Metaphor ReFantazio won 3 standout awards, Best Narrative, Best RPG, and Best Art Direction. And I'm very personally happy that it won Best Art Direction because I believe the game is, in many aspects, literally directed by the art. The Best Action Game and Player's Choice Award went to Black Myth Wukong. I'm currently playing this, and I have some thoughts. I'll discuss that a bit further on. The award for Games for Impact ended up going to Neva, so alright, I guess I am playing Neva at some point. And then the last award that I finally wanted to mention was the Best Score and Soundtrack, and this went to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Yes, I think this game has a phenomenal score and soundtrack, really capturing the essence of Final Fantasy VII and just bringing hit after hit throughout the game. And now let's go into the announcements. Oh my. Now, I've pulled a few descriptions of these from Eurogamer.net. They have an article that I'll link in the description that links to all of the announcement trailers as well, but they've got some decent descriptions here, so I will jump those in when I can. The first game I want to talk about that was announced was Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. This is a 2D side-scrolling pixel art return to form for the series, and it hasn't been 2D since the NES between 1988 and 1991 with the original Ninja Gaiden trilogy. Quote from Eurogamer.net, made by The Game Kitchen, the studio behind the rock-hard soulsy Metroidvania Blasphemous and Dotemu, the publishers behind Streets of Rage 4, Ragebound, looks to set to follow in Blasphemous' 2D pixel art footsteps for an agile, slice-and-dice adventure that's almost certainly going to kick our collective asses when it arrives in summer 2025, end quote. So this is from the developers of Blasphemous, which is a 2D side-scrolling Souls-like Metroidvania that I like very much, and I do still need to play the sequel, Blasphemous 2. And I don't have too much familiarity with the Ninja Gaiden series as a whole. I remember renting one or two of the 3D ones in the mid-2000s and just remember them being very difficult games. Another announcement was the developers behind action fighting game Sifu had announced their new title. It's a soccer video game called Rematch, and this is obviously a departure from what might have been expected from the studio, but if they can take and bring over elements in the feel of playing Sifu mixed with the feeling of a soccer game, then I think this is certainly one to look out for. Next, there was Shadow Labyrinth. So, quote from Eurogamer.net, riffing on the just-released Pac-Man episode of Amazon's Secret Level TV anthology series, this new take on Pac-Man looks to be an intriguing dark fantasy Metroidvania where Old Pac, or Puck as it's known in the TV show, guides a homegrown creature to the end of a maze-like world. In the episode, Puck manipulates the creature to try and escape, but it looks like you'll have greater control of Puck's monstrous jaw powers here. End quote. So this is based on the Secret Level episode, which I'll discuss a little bit later, but all based around Evil Pac-Man, which I think is an interesting take for the property, so we'll see how that does. And then another game that was announced that looks really cool is Split Fiction from Hazelight, and this is the developer behind It Takes Two, A Way Out, and Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I'm very impressed by this studio ever since, going back to Brothers, and just seeing their progression is really cool. Quote from Eurogamer.net, from the studio behind It Takes Two comes another co-op action-adventure. This time, you take control of two writers who get trapped in a simulation of their own respective fantasy and sci-fi novels. Just like It Takes Two, each character will have their own special weapons and items that evolve over time and complement each other when it comes to solving puzzles. Dragons with different abilities, for example, or special exosuits that let you morph ball around. It's coming in quite soon, too, in March 2025, end quote. So one of the bigger games that was announced was Witcher 4. This is the next entry in the Witcher series, and I love The Witcher. I can't wait to make all sorts of new adventures with Ciri. If you are unfamiliar, Ciri is the previous protagonist of the first three games, Geralt. She is his protege. I think this is a perfect, logical step in the right direction for the series and the Witcher franchise as a whole, and now I'll just be waiting ever so patiently for an actual gameplay trailer. I thought the tone that they showed off for this trailer was really cool. I would highly recommend checking it out if you're into The Witcher or, anything related to that. And oh my gosh, From Software deciding to decimate my free time once again with Elden Ring Night Rain. This is a new standalone game title focused around surviving through 3 nights in a roguelike and battle royale style gameplay loop. This can be played with up to 3 players and thankfully can be played purely as a single player game, which I very much appreciate. I've never been a big fan of online components in From Software games, partly because of the online performance when entering another player's world or engaging in combat with someone else. I really just like to stick to the single-player game, although I'm fine with certain things like random invasions to shake it up a little. It seems like as the focus here will be multiplayer, so maybe the optimization will perform a bit better than other titles. And what's most intriguing for me is the return of bosses from other Dark Souls games. Notably, the Nameless King from Dark Souls 3 appears in the reveal trailer for Night Rain, so I'm very curious to see how this all ties in with the lore of Elden Ring and also the lore of Dark Souls and why these characters are here and returning, so that's very exciting for me. A game franchise that is making its return is Turok with Turok Origins, and I'm glad this property is back, but maybe not exactly this way. This is from what it looks like to be a third-person shooter game, really colorful, a bit looking like a game that also came out this year that deals with dinosaurs called Exoprimal. When I saw the trailer, I said, "Who put Warframe in my Turok?" It was always traditionally a first-person shooter game, so from what I've seen, I don't know if it'll recapture anything from the original N64 trilogy, or maybe even my personal favorite, 2002's Turok Evolution. going back to that game in particular definitely has its flaws, and it's one of the weaker entries in the series overall. But man, do I remember having so much stupid fun playing multiplayer with my friends, role-playing as the worst zookeeper in the world in the secret zoo level, which featured walkable and interactable exhibits for all the dinosaurs in the game, and using weapons like the rocket launcher, which had an alternate fire mode where it would essentially fire a laser into the enemy, paralyzing them, and then dismembering them limb by limb. It was awesome. There was something so much fun about seeing the lizard enemies die as you cut off their limbs, sort of like a predecessor to Dead Space. But we'll see what happens with Turok Origins. So good luck to the studio. Good luck to them. We'll see how that turns out. The sequel to Obsidian's Outer Worlds, Outer Worlds 2, got a trailer. This looks cool, although I haven't played the first one. Even after the secret level episode, which I'll talk a little bit about, it does still interest me. And I have my thoughts on that, so I'll discuss that and I'll discuss that soon. Fumito Ueda's Project Robot was announced. This is the creator of Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and The Last Guardian. This involves a character climbing into a giant robot head that ejects from its body to escape an encroaching darkness. I love the vibe. It looks really cool. There's just not, there's just not a lot to go off via the trailer. But if it's anything like Shadow of the Colossus or Ico, then this is definitely also something to look out for in the future. First Berserker Kazan got a new trailer. This continues to look awesome and one that I'm continually interested in. They had a demo at Tokyo Game Show, but the line was a little bit long, and it did have a massive booth, which looked really cool. But yeah, I'm stoked every time that I see this game. It looks really cool, really awesome, so I'm excited. And now one of the biggest games for me that was announced was Onimusha, The Way of the Sword. Oh my gosh, let's freaking go. Now, this is a return to the series which started on PlayStation 2 with Onimusha Warlords, the latest released game in 2006 with Onimusha Dawn of Dreams. This is a third-person action-adventure title taking place in ancient Japan with demons and samurai and the sorts. The series has been long dormant, so it's very, very exciting to see this return. Onimusha is developed by Capcom, and Capcom also announced the sequel to Okami. This game originally released on PS2, had a prequel on the DS, Okamiden, and received several remasters and HD re-releases throughout the years. Okami, if you don't know, is an adventure game in the style of 3D Legend of Zelda games, except you play as a wolf. Okami has excellent art, and the whole game is almost like a painting, and some of the gameplay mechanics also have you using a literal paintbrush to assist in that gameplay. And Capcom themselves are crushing it with all of these games, between Monster Hunter Wilds, Okami, Onimusha, Kinitsugami Path of the Goddess released this year, and the re-release of their fighting collections. So they have come out with the Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, the Capcom Fighting Collection, and next year we are getting the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, which is very exciting. But they've also come out with Dragon's Dogma 2 this year. They have all of the Resident Evil games, so they are on fire, really. They are crushing it. And then the final game that was announced is Naughty Dog's Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet. I cannot wait for this game. This game looks awesome. The vibes look really cool. There wasn't any gameplay from the last snippet of the trailer, but we do see the protagonist going up against some sort of alien with a laser sword, and I'm all in. The job of a trailer is to set a tone, and I think this reveal both gets me excited and leaves a lot for the imagination. In my mind, I want this to be like a Naughty Dog super game, mixing elements from Jak and Daxter, Uncharted, and The Last of Us. And it seems like it will still be heavily based around the story, which I'm excited for, but a quick glimpse of the potential combat seems way more like an action game compared to The Last of Us, which is a third-person shooter at the end of the day. And we have to remember, Naughty Dog has been making third-person shooters for over a decade now, between Uncharted and The Last of Us, so it's very exciting to see that they're exploring or maybe even returning to a more melee combat-focused game. The main character, Jordan Munn, is played by actress Tati Gabrielle, and she looks really cool. She's got a dope jacket, her spaceship is a Porsche, and her role seems to be that of a bounty hunter, sort of like Spike in Cowboy Bebop. I'm really excited to experience the story in this game, as I said, and Tati herself has starred in other Naughty Dog projects, including the live-action adaptation of Uncharted, and she's also been cast as Nora for the second season of HBO's The Last of Us. The cast also so far looks great with her, Kumail Nanjiani, who appears briefly as a still image, and he's the one that Jordan is about to go after. He's the one that she's about to go bounty hunt. And Haley Wegrin Gross is portraying this bounty hunter boss or something as she's speaking with Jordan, providing the mission detail. Between the scratchy monitor, her eye patch, the cigarette, this appearance immediately reminded me of Far Cry Blood Dragon. I don't know if anyone else got that, but ultimately, I love Naughty Dog's games. My parents, to an extent, also like their games, and there's something there. My mom, in particular, had watched me play the first Last of Us, and both her and my dad got into watching the HBO adaptation and also enjoyed it very much. I think it's very exciting for Naughty Dog to bring us a brand new franchise, and I want them to take all the time that they need to make it work, to polish the game in how Naughty Dog titles are generally expected to be. So the Game Awards 2024 announcements were truly wild, most being dreams or wishes in the past, and it was certainly a step up from last year in terms of the overall pace of the show. So bravo, Jeff, I think that was an excellent show. And now I'd like to pivot into talking about Secret Level from Amazon. So to reiterate, this is Amazon's new animated anthology series, which has already, as of recording, been greenlit for Season 2. There are 15 episodes as shorts, all roughly under 20 minutes, with the shorter ones being only a few minutes in length. And some highlights for me include Mega Man, Pac-Man, the Warhammer 40k episode, Armored Core, Dungeons & Dragons, and Sifu. For all of these, I felt like they could be a little bit longer, especially the Mega Man episode. One of the best things I think this show does is that it makes me want to go play these games. I've never played The Outer Worlds, and I didn't even really enjoy the Secret Level episode, but for some reason I'm like, yeah, that seems like an interesting game to check out at some point. The weakest part of all of this for me is a little inverse of the previous compliment. I feel like all these stories would have been cooler just as games. However, it actually turns out that at least some of these are tied with actual video game projects. Pac-Man, for instance, had its episode drop days before the Game Awards. As I mentioned earlier, Shadow Labyrinth was announced, and everyone was like, hey, that's that Pac-Man from Secret Level. After watching the episode, I thought to myself and wrote down, this would be cooler as a game, and then I wrote 2D action adventure, and it looks like we're getting exactly that, which is cool. But for other episodes like Dungeons & Dragons, Sifu, Armored Core, Warhammer 40k, those already have very recently released games out, which also made me want to go play those games. The Warhammer 40k and Armored Core episodes were among my favorites purely because of how gnarly and high octane they were. I feel like these, and pretty much all episodes for that matter, totally nailed the goal of capturing the vibe of the game. My favorite by far, which also happens to be the shortest, was Mega Man, and I loved this. This dang near made me cry, and I think it's truly a shame that they limited this to just 5 minutes. I loved the interactions between Mega Man and Dr. Light and the whole setup with Wily's robots. It's all so good. It was just too short. And I want to see this expanded either with new Mega Man specific episodes or even an entire season dedicated entirely to Mega Man. I think that would be awesome. Alright, and I'll mention the ones that I didn't enjoy so much. So The Outer Worlds seems like a fun game. It's a first-person RPG shooter made by Obsidian, who developed Fallout New Vegas. It's set in space. There's all this weird stuff going on with characters and aliens in the world, and I've heard about some genuinely fun-sounding quest lines. The weapons, too, all look awesome. The Secret Level episode, on the other hand, was pretty boring to me. Maybe it's just because I haven't played the source material, but I haven't played Warhammer Space Marine 1 or 2, and I see myself having a deeper pull with that series than Outer Worlds. The animation in all these episodes is pretty wild, and really a leap forward in my opinion. The problem I have is that with any property that contains more or less regular human beings, the uncanny valley takes me completely out. And this was accentuated in both the Outer Worlds and the Crossfire episode, and I just dislike the look of the characters when animated this way. And I'm unsure why I favor other human-related ones like Warhammer or the character model in Armored Core. The whole thing just gave me Polar Express energy, and honestly, I wanted none of that. The episode essentially follows this dude named Amos as he tries to win the affection of a prominent scientist he knows through different scientific testing trials, and I don't know, maybe I feel like I've seen this before. Also, I'm not sure if I missed something, but I was really confused during a short montage sequence where, seemingly out of nowhere, the female character throws up. And I don't remember that being specifically involved with any testing, so I don't know what that was, and I had to pause and rewind to be like, what? The other episode I didn't enjoy so much was Concord. Concord, for those unaware, was a first-person hero-based shooter in the style of Overwatch from Firewalk Studios. Was being the key word there. A studio Sony purchased a few years ago. Now, they faced heavy scrutiny, by myself included, leading up to the open beta test given to all PlayStation Plus users on PS5. And there had really only been one main trailer released prior to this, with its cast of characters gearing up for some sort of whimsical space heist a la Guardians of the Galaxy. The humor and the dialogue just seemed to be ripped straight out of a Marvel movie with all sorts of cringy quips. The characters themselves, the heroes of the game, were not interesting or even appealing to view or look at. Now, there's a difference, I think, between the Uncanny Valley in the Secret Level Outer Worlds episode compared to the character design and models for Concord. The character models in the Outer Worlds Secret Level episode, while they gave me personal cringe, I wouldn't say that every character has an unappealing art design. Everyone sort of fits in that world, there's cohesion, and things make sense. Concord's characters, on the other hand, are just simply unappealing to look at least in my opinion. And that doesn't necessarily matter when it comes to gameplay. The game was a first-person shooter, so you really never even see the character models outside of special or ultimate abilities where the camera zooms back. However, it totally matters, I think, in the context of the game overall and the overall cohesion of the art style and art design. Now, I played the beta when it came out over the summer, and the game felt perfectly fine to play. The gunplay and gameplay at its core was fairly decent. It was just everything around it that brought it all down ultimately. In my opinion, the game modes were derivative, the maps lacking with a sense of flow, and with no story at all, I lost interest very quickly. Everyone's health was also very bullet sponge-like, where the time to kill ratio for me was just unbearable at a point. With hundreds of millions of dollars funding the production and marketing of this game, the game officially launched on August 23rd, 2024, and just after 2 more weeks, the game was shut down, along with Sony shutting down Firewalk Studios, due to an overwhelming lack of fanfare and engagement. I haven't seen numbers for people playing on PlayStation, but the charts from the Steam PC release were rough to say the least. According to the website SteamDB, or Steam Database, with an all-time peak of 697 players. To give an example for comparison's sake, also from SteamDB, a game called Killing Floor 2, which released in 2016, has both roughly 14,000 players at this moment and a peak all-time of roughly 70,000. To accentuate this further, a game on PC called Banana, currently at the time of recording, has 81,000 active players. That's 81,000 active players, and an all-time peak of 917,000 as of 6 months ago, which also coincidentally was around the time that Concord had its beta and was released. And I felt absolutely nothing from watching the Secret Level episode. It was all just that same flat Marvel humor, and they even pulled the same or similar mascot gag from a film released in 2022, Bullet Train. This was just totally unforgettable and unfortunately unremarkable. But as a whole, I really liked Secret Level. I see these as almost the Black Mirror of video games, whether they're attached to an unannounced project or not. And moving forward, I'd love to see new franchises or series taken with this scope and lens, and maybe even returning to some from the first season. Mega Man certainly invites further exploration, and if it follows up what we got this week, then say no more. And now I'd like to get into some of the games that I'm playing, and I know I mentioned something about bananas earlier, so speaking of monkeys, I'm about 10 hours into Black Myth Wukong, and I'm thoroughly enjoying my time so far. This is a third-person action title created by developer Game Science and released earlier in 2024. Black Myth Wukong is directly inspired by the classic Chinese novel Journey to the West, a Chinese mythology story. In the game, you play as a monkey, the destined one, a descendant of the great monkey Buddha Sun Wukong. Yes, you play as a monkey. And I remember seeing the first trailer and being immediately drawn into this Souls-like action game starring a monkey. I'm all for anthropomorphic characters in video games. To be honest, Ty the Tasmanian Tiger is one of my favorite 3D platformers, so the more fantastical the better in my opinion. Most if not all the characters and enemies you interact with and fight are also animals, be it wolves, rats, snakes, frogs, and other otherworldly type mythological creatures. I've only completed the first 2 main chapters of the game, and I'm so excited to see what else I get to meet in the rest of the playthrough. I have zero familiarity with the source material, so all of this stuff is just so new and so cool to me. The game so far is very challenging, but not difficult enough to where I'm getting angry over mistakes or anything. It takes a lot of excellent inspiration from other games where if you aren't strong enough or don't have the right abilities for a certain boss fight, the game allows abundant exploration, at least so far, allowing you to get stronger, level up, add more skill points, or new spells and abilities. There's all sorts of secret paths and hidden bosses, and I love how I'm just coming across some of these just naturally as I play the game. The combat itself feels good, and your main weapon is a transforming bow staff that you can augment during battle with different stances. My favorite so far is the charged stance. I just feel like it gives me both the most power and the most freedom with how I like to play the game. I was also hoping in terms of the boss battles, which have all so far been amazing in my opinion, I was hoping that defeating them would give me a similar sense of fulfillment that I had when playing anything in the Dark Souls series. Taking down difficult bosses in Dark Souls, in particular Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, provided me with such a distinct taste of satisfaction and achievement that it's addicting. This is part of the secret sauce of these games, at least for me, where I feel so good after fighting something that, even if I died 100 times against it before, I'm stoked for the next fight. I'm happy to say that Black Myth Wukong certainly meets those expectations at this point. Black Myth Wukong is also a game that is full of boss fights, leading some to describe it as a boss rush game, although I think there is enough gameplay and story variety that it's a lot more than that. The game also looks and runs well on PS5, and the battle animations between all the bosses and your character are so cool. With that, I think there's a distinct rhythm and flow to the game's art direction overall, and it absolutely works for me. So far, my thoughts on the game are extremely positive, and I'll definitely provide further thoughts when I've finished the game. Also on the side, I'm playing those two games I mentioned last week, Infinity Nikki and Path of Exile 2. So both of these games have taken a little backseat due to Wukong, but nonetheless I have several hours played between the two, and I have some thoughts. Infinity Nikki is one of the most joyfully chill games I've played, certainly from 2024. You, as the main protagonist, play as Nikki, a girl who is markedly obsessed with clothing and stylish outfits, so much so that on her way to a gala or ball, a mysterious ruby red dress takes control of her, whisking you and Nikki's strange cat friend Momo away to the magical world of Mirrorland, with the goal of saving a goddess of wishes and collecting all the wind stars. Wind stars are Super Mario-like stars that you collect throughout the world by completing challenges, playing minigames, or simply by running around, or by taking part in things like outfit battles. And all the while you are acquiring new dresses and outfits that allow you to perform certain actions, like catching bugs, fishing, or grooming an animal. These all, of course, net you rewards, which you can use in currency or crafting. And if you just got nervous by the word crafting, don't worry. There's nothing in this game, at least at this point, that makes you craft things like buildings or things like tools or weapons. The only real crafting that you'll be doing is with different pieces of clothing or entire outfits. The combat, which, yes, there is combat, is incredibly simple and easy. Your main attack is through a dress that allows you to use a wind-based ranged attack, and I'm not sure if this expands further throughout the game, but right now it feels like a one-button-does-all sort of thing. Of course, with you moving around and navigating in between enemies and boss attacks. And yeah, this game has boss fights too. So far, I've only fought the first one, a rock-based golem enemy, and this was also stupid easy to fight. But like I said, this makes it so that the overall experience isn't a challenge or a grind fest where you need to repeatedly hunt enemies for experience needed in other challenge or boss fights. Because of this simple combat system, you can focus on just having fun. For me, it's genuinely quite fun moving throughout the world, the platforming is fun, and the story is actually keeping me pretty engaged. There's infrequently some darker undertones going on with the story, with certain characters drawing you into strange mysteries. This is also a gacha game, which means you'll find a ton of microtransactions within the menus. But honestly, I haven't found the gacha mechanics to be intrusive to the overall experience. You're really only pulling for specific 5-star outfits or buying currency for upgrade materials. I feel like you could almost ignore it entirely and still have a good time playing the game. The game itself is also free to play, so you really don't have to spend anything to get into it or continue playing. A lot of gacha games I've played, like Honkai Star Rail for instance, have this wall of difficulty that at some point just naturally throughout the life cycle of the game it gets almost impossible to catch up if you've missed days of play or missed completing missions or upgrades or weapons, etc. Sometimes to the point where you feel like you need to spend money, and I dislike that very much. The less I played, the more I felt like I needed to catch up. Infinity Nikki, on the other hand, doesn't really have any of this at this point. At my current enjoyment of the game, I feel totally confident that if I set the game down for a few weeks or even a month, I could jump right back in and continue progress as normal. I hope this also goes to show that I play a lot of different kinds of games, not just hardcore role-playing games or violent action games. And for the final game in discussion today, let's go to Path of Exile 2. Path of Exile 2 released in early access last week with a $30 entry point, and what that means essentially is that the game is unfinished. It's content complete up to a certain point in Act 3, but until the game officially releases, the development team grinding gears can modify or make updates and additions, buffs or nerfs to the game throughout this period of development. And I had spent a lot of time in Path of Exile 1, so this was a game that I was personally highly anticipating. I even had the fortunate opportunity to sit down and play a demo earlier this year at the Tokyo Game Show, and to reiterate, I remember it easily being one of my favorite games I played at the event. This is a dark and gritty action RPG, viewed isometrically or sort of from the top down, in the gameplay stylings of something like Blizzard's Diablo series. If you, like myself, are playing on controller or gamepad, you navigate the world with the left stick, with all of your buttons being attacks and spells, which you can organize in a row on the bottom of your screen, similar to other action RPGs, and also, of course, Path of Exile 1. I think the game so far is very fun. I've been in Act 2, so I'm still making my way through, but I've absolutely loved my time with the game so far. In the same way that I can sink myself into a relaxing session of Infinity Nikki, I get an almost similar feeling moving through this world, fighting the hordes of darkness, leveling up and upgrading and buffing out my character. Like my play session at Tokyo Game Show, the game plays like butter. Each class and ability feels very smooth, and while I've mainly been playing as the Witch in the new Monk class, I've been hearing and seeing a lot of cool things associated with the ranged classes like Ranger and Mercenary. I, of course, haven't completed what's currently available within the game, but so far I'm wicked happy with my time spent in it. And so with that, we've wrapped up episode 2 of this quest. Thank you so much for sticking around. Feel free to leave a like or subscribe, and in the comments, let me know what you enjoyed most from the Game Awards, if you watched them at all, or if you were able to check out some of the announcement trailers. Or if you've seen Secret Level, what's your favorite episode, and what do you think about it as a whole? And lastly, the final 2 things here, and they're actually movie-related. First, the James Gunn Superman trailer is out, and oh my god, it looks so good. I'm so excited. Let's go. I would definitely recommend checking that out if you haven't at this point. And before I go, a little sneak peek, if you will, for the next episode. I'm seeing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 tonight, and I'm very excited. I will for sure give my thoughts next time. Well, alright, I'll be busy playing games, seeing Sonic, and next week is Christmas, so I don't know when the next video will be, but until next time, thank you for checking out Ryan's Game Quest. I appreciate you, and happy holidays. Take care.